In the 8th year of our relationship, Thaddeus Harrington sold me to the city's richest man, Orson Blackwell, for $1 million. At the time, I was unaware of the truth and, feeling wronged, initiated the breakup. Thaddeus was deeply hurt, returned home, married someone else, and had children, while I was threatened with videos demanding I become Orson Blackwell's mistress. One day, the boss's wife came to my house with people, and by then he was already married. When I became pregnant, Orson Blackwell's wife forced me to have an abortion, even though his child was already a month old. It wasn't until that day, when I took my feverish son to the hospital, that I happened to encounter the three of them. As I hesitated whether to avoid them, I overheard their conversation. "Why don't you go trick Arden Whitaker, that foolish woman, again? Back then, she could deceive him out of $1 million. Now that she's wealthy, she can probably deceive him out of even more." Once my son's fever subsided and his face regained its normal color, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. While he was asleep, I went to the restroom and washed my face. But when I came out, I unexpectedly encountered someone I hadn't seen in ages. My ex-boyfriend, Thaddeus. He was sitting in the hallway with a woman, both of them looking gloomy. I couldn't help but stare at his handsome face, afraid to miss any details. At 28, Thaddeus was no longer young, looking much thinner and more tired than before. I was hesitating whether to go over and say hello when I suddenly heard them mention my name. The woman was being held by Thaddeus, her eyes red and teary. She said, "Husband, you spent the $1 million from selling Arden, but we still owe tens of thousands for little Bow's medical bills. Why don't you go trick Arden, that silly girl, again? Back then, you could sell her for $1 million. Now that she's rich, you can probably trick her out of even more." I immediately realized who the woman was. She was Jessamine Covington, the wife Thaddeus had married back home. I had heard about her from friends. When Thaddeus got married, I even sent a red envelope with $52,000 through a friend. My feelings toward Jessamine were complicated. I envied her for marrying Thaddeus, yet I also felt a bit jealous. Now, hearing her words, I suddenly understood the truth behind why Orson Blackwell had appeared in my hotel room back then. I had always thought it was because I was drunk and forgot to lock the door, allowing Orson Blackwell to enter. I had never suspected Thaddeus. Actually, he loved me very much and I loved him too. We had been in love for 8 years and were almost ready to get married. If that hadn't happened, Thaddeus listened to Jessamine's words, lowering his head without saying a word. I sighed in relief. I knew he still cared about me. But the next moment, he spoke. "I've already figured out how to get some money from her. That woman still has feelings for me. Zebediah Mercer told me she often asks about me. If I take the initiative to approach her, she'll definitely become attached to me, and we might even get some benefits from her." Thaddeus and Jessamine were whispering about their plans, filled with confidence and contempt toward me. I hid in the corner and overheard some of their sinister plans, feeling a chill run down my spine. Sure enough, people who sleep in the same bed aren't easy to deal with. "Let's see how you plan to deceive me." I thought I'd have to wait a few more days before they made their move. But the next day, Thaddeus approached me. "Arden, long time no see. How have you been? You seem to be in a hurry to find me. I guess you're really short on cash." At that moment, I was crying because I was watching a drama. The two main characters in the show, who were in love, had separated due to a misunderstanding. Hearing Thaddeus's voice, I immediately thought of the two of us. After a moment of silence, I composed myself and said, "I'm fine. How about you?" My voice sounded muffled and nasal from crying. Thaddeus immediately sensed something was off. He might have mistaken my sadness for being moved by him, thinking I was intentionally acting heartbroken to try to get back together. "I'm not doing well either. I miss you so much, and I might not have much time left before I die. I just want to be with the person I love and enjoy our last moments together. Will you still accept me?" I thought about it, and felt like I should act like those people in TV dramas who beg for reconciliation. He sniffled, his voice trembling with emotion. Sounding very happy. "I'm willing. I've never forgotten you all these years. Are you finally coming back to me?" Thaddeus heard my answer and sighed in relief, then pretended to be happy and said he'd come find me. I pretended to be deeply moved and sent him the address, acting like a love-struck fool. Not long after, Thaddeus appeared at my doorstep, looking much paler than the day before. It seemed he had stayed up all night to look weak for me. I sneered inwardly, but didn't expose his plan. Over the years as Orson Blackwell's mistress, I'd learned a lot. Reading people's expressions was a basic skill. Later, I used having a son as a condition to secure a stake in the company and enough money to last me a lifetime. Fortunately, Orson Blackwell was killed by another woman while he was sleeping. Before dying, he left a will bequeathing all his assets to his son. Regardless, I am now a wealthy person and no longer need to worry about threats from others. On the surface, I put on a very moved expression, welcomed Thaddeus inside, and asked him about his recent circumstances with concern. Why don't we go to the hospital for a checkup? I have money now. I can find a doctor to examine you. Thaddeus, who had been silently observing his surroundings from the sofa, paused for a moment before sighing helplessly. I've already had numerous checkups. The doctors all said I might only have half a year left. I don't want to waste any more time at the hospital. I just want to be with you. Thaddeus looked at me with eyes brimming with emotion, as if he couldn't live without me. I smiled, pretending to be a little shy, and lowered my head, but in reality, I didn't want to see his funny expression anymore. I no longer doubted him, and began to treat him like a precious treasure, taking him to experience the life of a wealthy person. I wanted to see if he would still be willing to live an ordinary life with his wife after enjoying such a luxurious lifestyle. With this thought in mind, I smiled even more broadly at Thaddeus, who was trying on clothes. Perhaps he began to believe that I loved him, so he made a suggestion. Why don't we hire a nanny? I don't want you to work so hard taking care of me every day. It breaks my heart. I shook my head and smiled happily. Taking care of you isn't tiring at all. I feel so happy cooking for you every day. The aunt took a paid leave, and my son went to stay with his grandparents. This is so I can focus on acting and watching plays. I specifically bought cheap prepackaged meals for all 3 meals. Cooking water doesn't take much effort. Under his insistence, I pretended to be helpless and eventually agreed to his suggestion. The next day, Jessamine appeared before me in her disguise, looking like a simple, honest rural woman. Having 2 people take care of me is pretty nice. I lay in Thaddeus's arms and teased her playfully about her appearance. How can this nanny look like this? It's unbearable. Can we get another auntie? Jessamine's expression twisted instantly. She wanted to say something but suppressed her emotions, forcing out a flattering smile. Thaddeus feared she might slip up, so he told her to go do the housework. She's a relative from my hometown, taking care of a sick child alone. It's pretty tough for her, but she works diligently and is quite efficient. I looked at Jessamine, who was mopping the floor, with some suspicion, but reluctantly accepted the explanation. Go wash the grapes, make sure every grape is clean. Jessamine had no choice but to put down the mop and turn to wash the grapes. I reminded her again to wash her hands first before washing the grapes, as I thought her hands were a little dirty. As Jessamine was preparing to wash the grapes, she paused for a moment as soon as she started moving her hands. I obediently washed my hands several times before washing the grapes. After the grapes were brought over, I leaned against Thaddeus's chest and let him feed me. Jessamine, who was cleaning nearby, saw this and looked clearly upset. I accidentally broke a vase and immediately said angrily, "This vase is worth tens of thousands of dollars. How are you going to compensate for it?" Jessamine widened her eyes, pointing at the broken vase, and said, "This vase is worth at most a few dozen dollars. I've never seen a vase worth tens of thousands of dollars before." Actually, this vase was indeed something I bought while shopping for just a few dozen dollars. But today, I said it was worth tens of thousands, so it was worth tens of thousands. Of course, I wouldn't embarrass myself by continuing to argue with her. She exuded an air of poverty. Just because you've never seen a vase worth tens of thousands of dollars doesn't mean it doesn't exist. She's clumsy at her job. If it weren't for the fact that you're Thaddeus's relative, I would have fired you long ago. I vented all my grievances against her in one breath. Jessamine's expression changed drastically, and she was trembling with anger. It was only when Thaddeus fed me some grapes that I managed to stop. Lijai probably didn't mean it. Arden, you're so rich, don't bother with her. Let's just eat the grapes. Not bothering isn't realistic. After all, both of you are here for my money, and I worked hard for every penny of it. I still acted very domineering, making her kneel down and use a towel to clean the floor. While cleaning up the shards, Jessamine accidentally cut her hand and started bleeding. She couldn't help but cry out to Thaddeus, "Husband, my hand hurts so much." Thaddeus, who was holding me, couldn't sit still after hearing that. He immediately let go of me and ran over to Jessamine. holding her hand tenderly. I couldn't help but frown and give a cold laugh. Who are you calling, Thaddeus? Why are you so nervous? Thaddeus finally realized I was still there and let go of her hand. Once he came to his senses, he looked at me with an expression that seemed to say, "Why are you still like this? Lai Jai is just a relative. I was just being considerate. Why are you jealous? You're being a bit petty." As if afraid I would misunderstand, he kissed my cheek and then urged Jessamine to clean up. Jessamine glared at me angrily, her eyes slightly red, as she knelt down to clean up the broken pieces and wipe the floor. To avoid putting Jessamine in an awkward position, Thaddeus was particularly attentive toward me. He made tea, poured water, peeled fruit, and even gave me a massage. I enjoyed his hospitality and decided not to say anything else. I could wait until later to tease her. After all, she needed time to clean up. When Jessamine finally got up, exhausted, I slowly told her to make me some pork intestines. I wasn't too sure about the pork intestines from outside, so make sure to clean them thoroughly before cooking. I had just had some unprocessed pork intestines delivered, and they did smell pretty bad. Jessamine looked at Thaddeus for help. Thaddeus felt a little sorry for her, but he turned his head away and didn't say anything. I watched them coldly from the side, feeling a bit mocking. Relying on men is useless, especially unreliable men like this. You might as well beg me. So Jessamine had no choice but to work hard alone in the kitchen to prepare the pig intestines. When the pig intestines were served, I glanced at them and threw them into the trash can. Jessamine couldn't help but point at me and shout, "How could you do this?" I made this with care. Thaddeus couldn't help but speak up for her. "Arden, you weren't like this before. How can you waste food like this? Go pick it up from the trash can." "Don't waste it." I glanced at the trash can, which was filled with various kitchen scraps, making me feel nauseous and completely losing my appetite. Looking at the two people in front of me, I blurted out a shocking statement, "Thaddeus, I'm pregnant." As soon as I finished speaking, Jessamine couldn't help but scream, "How could you be pregnant? Whose child is it? Is it Thaddeus's?" Before I could respond, she immediately denied it. "It couldn't be his. You've only been together for a month." I shyly pulled out several pregnancy test strips I had prepared in advance. Clearly showing 2 lines, I also thought it was impossible, but I tested multiple times, and the result was the same. Jessamine stared at Thaddeus in shock, her breathing becoming rapid. Thaddeus turned pale and denied it frantically. "This isn't mine. I never touched you," to make himself sound more convincing. He repeated it loudly, "It's definitely not mine. Maybe it's from another man. Of course it's not yours. After all, those pregnancy tests weren't mine." I stood there pretending to be hurt, barely able to stand. She dug her fingers into her thigh, tears streaming down her face. "How could you think that of me? Do you remember the night we first met? You were drunk, and I told you I didn't want to, but you wouldn't listen. You dragged me back, and it happened several times. It wasn't real. I got him drunk. He was completely unconscious. I don't know if it's because he thinks I'm unclean or because he wants to keep Jessamine's reputation clean. Lately, he's been saying he's worried about vomiting blood on me, so he refuses to sleep with me. But I also feel a bit disgusted by him. Men over 25 are like they're almost 60. It's better to spend money on a young, handsome guy than be with someone like him. Even though I think this, I can still say other things offhand." I looked at myself in the mirror and nodded to myself with a secret smile. Crying so convincingly, looking so vulnerable, it made people want to protect me. Thaddeus's previous expression immediately turned hesitant. He looked at my stomach several times. Then at the pregnancy tests, Jessamine couldn't control herself and rushed forward to hit Thaddeus. "Thaddeus, how could you do this to me? You're too much." The situation unfolded too quickly for Thaddeus to react, and he was struck several times. I quietly stepped back and left the scene. At first, Thaddeus only tried to dodge her blows, hoping to calm her down. However, as Jessamine grew more enraged and struck him harder, Thaddeus began to lose his patience. Jessamine was violently shoved aside, landing on the ground with red handprints on her face, gasping for breath. "Are you done yet? You're just a nanny. What gives you the right to lay a hand on me?" She was furious, pointing at Thaddeus's nose and shouting, "You call me a nanny, Thaddeus? I'm your wife." Thaddeus was startled by her sudden outburst and quickly stepped forward to cover her mouth. "What are you saying here? That's complete nonsense. You're just a distant relative." Jessamine struggled wildly, trying to tear his hands away. I quickly interrupted their argument and asked Thaddeus in a hurt voice, Is what she said true? Are you two deceiving me? Thaddeus hesitated for a moment, as if he had realized something, then shook his head vigorously. Of course not. She might have divorced her husband and her mind isn't right. Don't believe a word she says. Arden, stay home and rest. I'll take her to the hospital to see a doctor. Before I could react, he tightly pulled the angry Jessamine out the door. See a doctor? I felt like this was more like a cover-up, watching the two of them walk away. I quietly followed behind. Thaddeus pulled Jessamine out of the door, got into the car, and they had a heated argument. Jessamine cried bitterly, desperately pulling at Thaddeus's clothes. Thaddeus held her tightly, trying to explain. Hugging each other, they accidentally kissed, almost getting entangled in the car. Finally, Jessamine calmed down. Blushing and pushed him away, Thaddeus gently kissed her cheek. I didn't know what they talked about, but Thaddeus drove off with a mischievous smile. The next day at noon, they returned as if nothing had happened. The doorbell rang for nearly half an hour before I slowly went to open the door. Thaddeus was initially impatient, but upon seeing me, he immediately brightened up. He said that Mtks Lai felt much better after taking the medicine and could return to work. Seeing Jessamine with a rosy complexion, I couldn't help but smile. Did she take her medicine? I think it's because there's a charming person around. Don't you care about me at all? I didn't sleep all night waiting for you. Thaddeus paused for a moment, then frowned at me. Don't be so unreasonable. Mingru is already acting strangely, and you just didn't sleep for one night. I couldn't help but roll my eyes inwardly. Earlier, he was calling her Mtks Li in front of me, but now he was calling her Jessamine so casually. Besides, under normal circumstances, shouldn't he at least show some concern for me, a pregnant woman, or ask about the baby's condition? Does he really think that just because I'm carrying his child, I'll be completely devoted to him? He really thinks I'm an idiot, doesn't even bother to pretend anymore. Thinking about it, I even felt like I didn't want to keep acting with them anymore. Thaddeus didn't want to stay outside the door anymore and walked in with Jessamine. As they passed me, Jessamine accidentally bumped into my shoulder. I almost lost my balance. I grabbed her hair angrily and shouted, "What are you doing? You bumped into the boss and didn't even apologize." Jessamine didn't expect me to react like that, and her scalp hurt from my grip. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Though she said she was sorry, her eyes were filled with resentment. Thaddeus turned his head in confusion and angrily shook off my hand. Arden, what are you doing? Mingru is in a bad mood today, don't bother with her. As soon as Jessamine was free, she hurried to Thaddeus's side, her eyes brimming with triumph. A surge of anger welled up inside me, growing stronger by the second. HMPH, you want to take my money and act so confident? I think you're getting a little too full of yourselves. I didn't bother pretending anymore and pointed directly at the door. Fine, if you're not feeling well, don't work. Go somewhere else. A nanny who gets 10,000 a month with double weekends. 6 insurances and a pension fund is easy to find. Why keep one who needs me to support her? Seeing me get serious, Thaddeus also grew tense, fearing I might really fire Jessamine. She hurriedly begged me not to get angry. Arden, don't be so angry. I just felt sorry for her. I care more about you. Lai Jai's child is still in the hospital and needs this salary for medical treatment. I glared at Jessamine without saying a word. Thaddeus gently pushed her, forcing her to apologize to me. Jessamine reluctantly bowed at a 90-degree angle, begging me to be more lenient. I'm sorry, boss. I'll listen to you from now on. Please don't fire me. My child is sick and I really need this job, please. As she spoke, Jessamine knelt on the ground, crying bitterly. Thaddeus looked at me, his eyes seemed to hold some displeasure. I sneered, my face expressionless. What are you trying to give me a morality lesson using your child? What gives you the right, Thaddeus? Do you think I'm heartless? Then leave immediately. Don't ever show your faces to me again. I have money and looks. Why should I put up with your nonsense? As soon as she finished speaking, Thaddeus was also stunned. He no longer paid attention to Jessamine kneeling on the ground, instead flashing a flattering smile and softening his tone. Arden, that's not how I feel about you. I've always loved you. Please let me stay by your side. Will you, please? I really don't want to be separated from you. I still didn't say a word. Thaddeus glanced at Jessamine, clenched his teeth and hit her several times. It's all your fault for making Arden angry. You really should reflect on your actions. Jessamine's face turned red quickly, and her once delicate features were no longer recognizable. I couldn't help but glance at her, but I still didn't say anything. Noticing that I had finally reacted, Thaddeus kicked her again with his foot. Jessamine tried to dodge but dared not, and ended up getting kicked several times. It wasn't until Jessamine was nearly unconscious, constantly apologizing to me, that I finally spoke. "All right, stop hitting her. I believe you, Jessamine. You should stay as the nanny too, if you make any mistakes in the future." Asking for forgiveness won't help. Thaddeus immediately stopped and told Jessamine to thank me quickly. Jessamine coughed a few times, struggled to sit up, and said to me, "Thank you for giving me this job. I hope you'll thank me like this in the future too." I didn't pay her any more attention, turned around, went back to my room to change clothes, and then took Thaddeus out to eat. "Before we come back, you need to clean the entire house." Jessamine nodded in agreement. When we left, I took Thaddeus to meet my friends. My friend was delighted to see us and immediately told the chef to prepare the meal. After eating well, we began discussing investment matters. Thaddeus massaged me carefully, occasionally asking if the pressure was right. My friend glanced at Thaddeus and jokingly said, "Is this the man you've been talking about lately? Is this the man who hurt you?" I nodded. "Yes, he's the man I've been thinking about all along." "That's right. He's the man I need to deal with," my friend said. "You two really are a good match. Congratulations." "Do you really like this kind of man?" I said. "We've known each other since high school and went through some twists and turns before getting back together. That was back when we were young. Things are different now." After chatting about some gossip, we got down to business. My friend excitedly told me she had recently bought some stocks and wanted to make money together. She said she'd been watching this stock for a long time, and now was the best time to buy. It was sure to make money. I wasn't very interested and didn't really believe her. "How much money could you make actually?" "I'm not really short on money right now." My friend leaned in close and whispered, "I invested $5 million a few days ago. And in such a short time, I've already made $50 million." Though her voice was low, Thaddeus heard it clearly. I rolled my eyes and joked, "You made money so quickly? Did you join a pyramid scheme?" What I meant was, "Are you treating him like a fool? Why are you exaggerating so much?" My friend patted my arm and said angrily, "I told you because I consider you my best friend. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't have said anything. Don't worry about it. Just make sure he believes you." My friend kept pulling my arm and chatting nonstop, making it sound like all I had to do was invest money to get rich overnight. I couldn't stand her act anymore and told her to stop. She glared at me angrily, then shifted her attention to Thaddeus, clearly noticing he was starting to get interested. "Since you're Arden's first love, I'll let you have this chance to make money. Why don't you invest a little too? You can't always rely on Arden to support you." Thaddeus was tempted but carefully refused. "Never mind, I won't live much longer anyway, so relying on Arden isn't so bad." I interrupted their conversation at the right moment. "Enough, stop bothering him. He doesn't have much money. I'll invest $1 million first, let's give it a try." Enough is enough, don't overdo it. Though my friend didn't want to end the topic, he shifted the conversation to shopping. We were chatting animatedly and decided to have the store send over some clothes and bags for us to pick out. My friend was very generous and gave me and Thaddeus a few sets of clothes. "I've made a lot of money lately, so this is just a small token of my gratitude." He said it so earnestly that I didn't want to expose him. This friend I met at a cocktail party 2 years ago. She's a bit like a princess. We hit it off and quickly became good friends. For this revenge plan, I asked her to help me put on a show. We played around like that for half the day until after dinner, when I took Thaddeus home. When we got back, Jessamine had just finished cleaning up and was getting ready to take a shower and rest. I called her back to make me some hangover soup. In front of her, I playfully pulled on Thaddeus's clothes. "There's a big bathtub in my room. Want to take a bath together later?" Thaddeus stiffened and refused outright. I felt a bit upset, huffed, and sat up from his embrace. He quickly grabbed my hand and explained, "You're pregnant? I'm worried I might accidentally hurt you." "I'm doing this for your own good." I looked at Jessamine's twisted face. Her hands were tightly clutching the towel, her fingers trembling uncontrollably from the effort. It was clear she was very uneasy. It's better if she's angry. I'd be upset if she didn't react at all. Under Thaddeus's soft pleas, I reluctantly agreed. But I still wanted him to sleep with me. Feeling movement outside the door, I kept teasing Thaddeus. My fingers slid down from his eyebrows, following the line of his straight nose. They continued down his Adam's apple and across his chest, finally reaching his lower abdomen. Thaddeus couldn't help but let out a soft moan, grabbing my hand and pleading softly. Arden, if you move, I won't hold back. I didn't respond, continuing my actions. Thaddeus couldn't take it anymore, rolling over to face me and leaning down to kiss me. Arden, you're pushing me, don't stop later. The person outside couldn't take it anymore and finally left, once their footsteps had completely faded away. I kicked the man who had been clinging to me like a dog with all my strength. Thaddeus was confused as he was kicked off the bed. He wanted to continue, but stood up with a hint of dissatisfaction. I wrapped the blanket tightly around myself and turned over to sleep. My stomach feels a little off. You should sleep on the floor tonight. The eavesdropper is gone. And he's no use now. Thaddeus reluctantly tried to continue, but I kicked him again. After a few more attempts, Thaddeus gave up and spent the night on the floor. The next morning, Thaddeus got up from the floor with a sore waist, barely able to walk out of the room. I changed into a special strapless dress and appeared in the living room. There were several obvious kiss marks on my collarbone, clearly showing that he had kissed me quite forcefully. Jessamine noticed the kiss marks immediately. Her body swayed slightly, and the glass cup in her hand fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. Thaddeus instinctively reached out to help clean up, but Jessamine waved him away. Thaddeus saw her reddened hand and felt a mix of confusion and unease. He turned around, sat down next to me, and fed me breakfast with a hint of irritation. I didn't mind not having to do it myself. I handed the soy milk on the table to Thaddeus and specifically told Jessamine that I had prepared a nutritious meal for him to help him recover. You must have been tired last night. I bet you didn't get much sleep. Eat something. Jessamine softly replied, okay, but tears streamed down her face as she turned away. Thaddeus thought about last night and felt a bit uneasy. It's okay, as long as you're okay. From this, I could tell that a rift was beginning to form between them. As a man, how could Thaddeus understand how strong a woman's jealousy could be? He had overestimated the depth of their friendship and trust. No one can accept their loved one being so enthusiastic and intimate with someone else in front of them. Once is okay, but what about twice, 3 times, 4 times? I smiled and opened my mouth to take the porridge Thaddeus fed me. 2 weeks later, I transferred 100,000 yuan to Thaddeus. When he received the money, he was puzzled and didn't understand why I would suddenly give him money. After all, before that, I had only taken him out to eat and drink, and there hadn't been many opportunities for me to give him money. I'm not stupid. I wouldn't give him money just to put on a show. I was planning to go eat anyway, and he could help me clean up afterward, like a trash can. I happily chatted with him about stocks. Earlier, I had invested 1,000,000 yuan in stocks for a friend and made over 10,000 yuan. I remember you mentioned wanting to start a business, so I planned to invest 10,000 yuan. Not long after, Thaddeus came to ask me for money to start a business, probably hoping to get money from me. At that time, I hadn't figured out how to deal with him yet, so I said I wasn't in a position to help and refused him. Now it's time to start the revenge plan. I need to set a trap to lure him in. Thaddeus was so surprised he widened his eyes and asked if it was true. I lay on the sofa with my eyes closed, pretending to rest, and nodded indifferently. Of course it's true. The money is already in your hands. How could it be fake? Thaddeus didn't say anything. He spent the entire day wanting to say something to me, but always stopped himself. I didn't ask him what was wrong and pretended not to notice. The next day, I took him out to thank our friends. I chatted briefly with my friend about stocks, then didn't continue the conversation. He left alone for a while in the middle. In the evening, after saying goodbye to my friends, I felt a bit reluctant but still went home. If Thaddeus hadn't been there, I might have gone with my friends to watch the performance. I really hope this play ends soon. These past 2 months have been pretty tiring. As soon as I got home, I skillfully woke Jessamine up to heat milk for us. Thaddeus was very concerned about me, gave me a massage to relax, and kept talking about stocks. I felt he wanted me to invite him to invest together. I didn't say anything, just closed my eyes and enjoyed his service. The milk was almost finished, and I was ready to take a shower and go to bed. A few days ago, he moved to the guest room on his own for the baby's sake. Jessamine saw him constantly rubbing his waist, and the anger in her eyes was about to boil over. At that moment, Thaddeus couldn't hold back anymore and brought up the topic of investing to help a friend buy stocks. I refused without hesitation. Something too easily obtained would make him suspicious. It's better to take it slow. You said you don't have much time left, right? All that money won't amount to much. The money you've worked so hard to save should be kept for yourself. Being contradicted by his own words, Thaddeus felt a bit embarrassed. However, driven by greed, he mustered the courage to continue. Now that you have a baby, I want to earn more money to secure a future for our child. I still refused. It's okay. My savings are enough to ensure our baby lives a happy life for the rest of their life. Thaddeus persisted in trying to persuade me. Jessamine, who seemed unaware of what was happening, worriedly urged him not to trust others so easily. Maybe the boss's friend is setting a trap to scam you out of your money. Don't be so naive and give all your money to others. I nodded in agreement. That's right. Don't believe those scammers who say you can make tens of thousands in just 2 weeks with only $1 million. Thaddeus had already regretted not seizing this opportunity to make money. Hearing Jessamine say this, he grew even angrier and couldn't help but shout at her to shut up. You're just a woman. What do you know? Who would take such a big risk to scam me? I'm willing. I wanted to shout it out loud. Thaddeus returned to my room that night, trying to charm me with his good looks. I noticed the hatred in Jessamine's eyes growing. After being harassed by Thaddeus for several nights and unable to sleep, I finally agreed to his proposal. Thaddeus was overjoyed and immediately transferred $1.32 million to me. Seeing that number, I never expected he had so much money. I remember you said you had no money to treat your son's illness. How did you suddenly get so much money now? I felt a bit suspicious and asked you directly. Why did you suddenly transfer so much money to me? Didn't you say you had no money to start a business? Jessamine, who was washing dishes in the kitchen, heard the amount and her eyes widened. She turned to look at Thaddeus. Thaddeus felt uneasy and dared not meet her gaze. He lowered his head and explained, Actually, it's not that much. I sold the house back home and borrowed some money from relatives and friends. Upon hearing this, Jessamine couldn't control herself anymore and slapped him. How could you do this? You sold the house and borrowed money. What about little Bao's illness? I pretended not to hear and ignored the question in her words. Thaddeus's face turned grim, and he pushed her away angrily. What do you know? Arden's friend is willing to take me along to make money. This is a golden opportunity that others would beg for. If you don't understand, just stay out of it. Don't interfere with me making money. I think you're the one who's not smart. Jessamine was so enraged by his words that she could barely stand, clutching her chest as she collapsed into a chair. You. Before she could finish, she fainted. Thaddeus was terrified and rushed forward to pinch her nose. But she didn't wake up. I told him to hurry and take her to the hospital. Then I transferred the money to the account my friend had sent me. Once the money was in my account, it was mine. Back then, I was worth $1 million. I offered $10,000 plus the expenses and accommodation Thaddeus had incurred these past few days. Let's give him a discount. Let's say he spent a total of $132,000. I started thinking about how to wrap this up. The next evening, Thaddeus and Jessamine returned home exhausted. Thaddeus's face was clearly angry, while Jessamine seemed calm. I raised my eyebrows, curiously watching them. Sensing a significant rift between the two, they had been gone for so long, yet their expressions didn't seem angry. That must mean they had been doing something else. Until the end of the month, they didn't even glance at each other in my presence, let alone have any physical contact. On the last day of the month, Jessamine invited me out for coffee and specifically asked me not to tell Thaddeus. We sat in a corner of the cafe, facing each other but not speaking. I stirred my coffee absent-mindedly, thinking it was time to end this. Jessamine stared at me silently for a long time. Seeing that I wasn't interested, she finally spoke up. Thaddeus and I are actually married. I took a sip of coffee and interrupted her. I already knew you were married. Jessamine looked surprised, her eyes widening instantly. She opened her mouth to speak but couldn't find the words for a moment before finally managing to say, Do you know why I'm still with him? Don't you know he's trying to scam you out of your money? I didn't answer her, but instead asked about the $1 million from back then. Was it your idea to sell me to Orson Blackwell for $1 million? I didn't really care if she had suggested it or not. I just wanted to know when the two of them had met, or if Thaddeus had been cheating behind my back. Jessamine paused for a moment, then shook her head. It wasn't me. We didn't even know each other back then. I only found out about it after he got married. I sighed in relief. It wasn't infidelity, it was all about the money. I didn't want to dwell on those painful days. But at that moment, I finally let go of my relationship with Thaddeus. Jessamine tried to say something else, but I raised my hand to stop her and played a recording for her. One of my business partners saw Lai Jai's photo on my social media and offered a 1 million yuan to spend a night with her. I refused. Why refuse? A 1 million for one night is a huge profit. And she doesn't have a proper job anyway. She couldn't earn that much. That's not right. After all, she's your relative. What if she finds out? Just don't let her know. She wouldn't dare spread it around. Forget it. I think this is too inhumane. The money isn't that much. You don't want the money. Give me the boss's contact info. I'll talk to him directly. The rest doesn't need to be said. This is enough. Jessamine has been with us recently, so we're very familiar with the voice in the recording. At that moment, she looked frozen, her eyes filled with despair and pain. She lowered her head, covered her face, and sobbed quietly for a while. After a long time, she wiped away her tears and told me about Thaddeus's plan. It turned out that Thaddeus thought I hadn't married all these years because I hadn't let go of the past. He believed that if he gave me the slightest hint, I would be willing to sacrifice everything for him again, just like before. That's why he claimed he was terminally ill. Approached me and planned to use entrepreneurship as a pretext to get me to give him money for his treatment. He first claimed his parents were sick to deceive me into giving him the second sum, then said he wanted to go for treatment to obtain the third sum. Finally, he pretended to die, took the money, and ran away, leaving a good impression in my heart, completely unconcerned that I would report him to the police to recover the money. I never thought he still saw you as the impulsive person you used to be. It turns out I was the impulsive one. I trusted him too much. I didn't comfort her. From the start, when she suggested letting Thaddeus deceive me, I didn't have much regard for her. Now telling her all this is just to make Thaddeus lose his family completely. After hearing what I wanted to know, I prepared to leave. Jessamine grabbed my hand again and asked tentatively, "We've already divorced. I just want to ask you one last thing. Is the child in your belly really his?" I didn't turn around and just said something casually before leaving. "You've already decided to divorce, so you must have thought it through. Why bother with this now? Will this affect your previous relationship?" I wasn't going to give her such a simple answer. What if they get back together because of this? I don't want to create trouble for myself. Jessamine didn't bring anything when she came, and she didn't have much to take when she left. She didn't come back that night. Thaddeus didn't ask where she went, only about the money from stock trading. I told him my friend was still busy and would transfer the money once they were done. It had been almost a week since I'd seen Jessamine, and Thaddeus finally asked me where she'd gone. At that moment, we were eating at a private dining restaurant owned by a friend. I sent a message to my friend, telling him to call someone to help me if I fainted. After sending the message, I looked up and told him that Jessamine had quit her job. Thaddeus's eyes widened, and he repeated, "Jessamine quit her job?" I nodded, then lowered my head to send a message to my friend, preparing to act. Then I told Thaddeus something important. My friend had just told me that the person who was helping her with stock trading had run away, and now she didn't have any money for us either. This news left Thaddeus feeling dizzy. He stood up excitedly, grabbed my shoulders, and shook me violently. "Are you lying to me? How can you say there's no money? That's over $1 million. My shoulders were hurting from his grip, and I tried to lift my hands to pry his hands off. But this action only made him more agitated. I struggled desperately, but he held on even tighter. After a struggle, I finally broke free of his grip, but he pushed me away angrily. As a result, I fell out of the window. When my body hit the ground, I fainted instantly. Before I lost consciousness, I was thinking how much I had lost. I had gone to the hospital just to get away from him. I should have found a safer place to stay. My friend had arranged everything, so I felt reassured. When I woke up, I was already in a hospital ward. Fortunately, it was only the second floor, so I could be discharged after a few days. I checked out of the hospital that night and took my son on a several-month-long trip abroad. Before leaving, I sold the original villa and moved to another one with a better environment. Later, I heard from Jessamine that Thaddeus couldn't find me and was frantic, even begging her to remarry him. He said he had been deceived by me, that he had always loved her, and it was just a moment of impulse. Jessamine said she wouldn't remarry him either, as she feared he might betray her one day. I deleted her contact information and turned to leave with my son to explore the world. From that day onward, I was no longer bound by anyone or anything. I was completely in control of my own life and had finally found the happiness that belonged to me.